Major progress with North Korea, the communist country putting its missile testing on hold, and the president tweeting, "This is very good news for North Korea and the world." Big progress.
And there's no question this is unprecedented. You have to have that iron fist in a velvet glove, and guess what? It's worked.
The DNC yesterday decided to sue the Trump campaign, sue Russia, and sue WikiLeaks.
But there is no evidence of collusion. If they want to sue Russia, that's fine. I actually would prefer the indictments that Mueller has against them.
James Comey officially now under investigation.
Comey is a leaker. We know that he leaked information and laundered it through a law professor, which is certainly not something any former head of the FBI should do.
It looks like I will not be able to be home for your birthday, but I hope this makes up for me not coming home.
You know who that is?
No.
Really?
Is it Lee?
Lee Greenwood.
Oh, yeah, we got him coming up.
We love Lee on the show, but he is also going to join us later on this hour because he knew Barbara Bush so well. He traveled with her. He's known her for over 30 years. So a big fan of him, but really looking forward to hearing what he had to say about her, knowing her so personally.
Absolutely. And, God bless USA. He's the man.
Every 4th of July, you always hear that song, and you can't help but shed a tear. It's an amazing song. Looking forward to having Lee on. The reason we are so proud in our country is because we stand up to bullies. And North Korea now striking a little bit more of a mild tone because of what President Trump did. The communist country putting its missile test on hold and closing one of its nuclear sites. President Trump calling it, quote, big progress, tweeting that he's looking forward to his high-stakes face-to-face meeting with dictator Kim Jong-un.
The two, of course, expected to talk about further isolation for the Hermit Kingdom, getting rid of its nukes altogether. And according to state TV, the testing has stopped effective immediately. The rogue nation also vowing to engage in conversation with its neighbors to secure peace in the Korean Peninsula. And that's why we're bringing in Mercedes Schlapp from the White House, our exclusive guest this morning. Mercedes, I remember it wasn't too long ago that a whole bunch of critics of this president were saying his rhetoric is dangerous. He's bringing us to the brink of nuclear war. Well, now it looks like maybe we're at the brink of peace.
Well, it clearly shows that President Trump's vision in focusing on denuclearizing North Korea, making sure that there's stability in the region, that is actually becoming reality. What we're seeing right now is that this maximum pressure campaign that the president has put on North Korea has basically had the Rocket Man, North Korean dictator, step back, and he's feeling the impact of these economic sanctions. And remember, this wasn't just President Trump doing this alone. This is working with global allies. We just saw President Trump with Prime Minister Abe and from Japan that basically talking about this issue of North Korea and saying we need to move forward to ensure that there's stability in the region. And it is working. And let's put it in historical context, is the fact that past administrations, going back from President Obama, even President Bush, there was concessions after concessions made without any real progress. And right now what we're seeing is real progress with making North Korea, denuclearizing North Korea.
Well, Mercedes, as you said, the president has not been doing this alone. He's had a lot of good help from people around him, one of those being Mike Pompeo, who was head of the CIA, now going through the nomination process of running the State Department. Questions as to whether he can get through. What is the White House's statement on how that's going and whether or not this progress with North Korea might help move things along for Mike Pompeo?
Well, I think what we're seeing in the actions in North Korea is why we quickly need Mike Pompeo to be confirmed as Secretary of State. The mere fact that these Democrats, many of them, are still saying that they're opposing Mike Pompeo, someone who's highly qualified, someone who, as we saw, went over to North Korea to have these very high-level talks, bring forth a diplomatic solution in addition to this maximum pressure campaign to North Korea, I think shows that he needs to be confirmed immediately. I just don't understand why the Democrats continue to resist on every single action that President Trump does. I mean, Mike Pompeo was voted in as CIA director with both Republican and Democrats' votes. And historically, there's bipartisan support when it comes to these Secretary of States. We know that for Hillary Clinton, John Kerry, they were voted in with both Republicans and Democrats. Because why? Because you know that the president needs the most highly qualified individuals to serve in these critical positions. And that is why I find it to be just so disheartening when you hear some of these Democrats saying that they're opposing Mike Pompeo, who is incredibly qualified for this job.
Mercedes, I want to double down on the historic nature of what has just happened over the course of the last 48 hours. This is a regime that for decades we have been unable to really get to speak to them. We sent Dennis Rodman, that's not serious. What we've done in the last 48 hours is real serious and could, I don't want to say check off the box entirely, but really eliminate one of the huge foreign policy problems that this administration and, quite frankly, our entire country faces.
Well, there's no question. I think it really, to the credit of President Trump and his tough stance on North Korea, on basically saying you're going to have to make some fundamental changes. You're going to need to stop building these nuclear sites. You're going to need to allow South Korea and the Americans to be able to have these military exercises. And it's because of the fact that he came up with, and his administration came up with, a very strategic solution in ensuring that there's this maximum pressure campaign on North Korea. These economic sanctions are hurting that country, and the mere fact that it wasn't done alone. So I think it shows that President Trump, not only in his strong leadership in basically saying we're going to stabilize this region, put a focal point on North Korea, but also being a coalition builder in the meantime, working with allies to make sure that it was a concerted effort to stop North Korea from becoming an even more dangerous actor in the region and in the world.
Mercedes, I want to switch topics, but real quick, I want to ask you, are we narrowing down a time frame? Is it May? Is it June when this summit will happen with Kim Jong-un? And we've been hearing reports that maybe somewhere like Switzerland will be the site, a neutral site like that. What say you?
Well, we have no additional details at this time. What we are looking forward to right now is having a successful summit. Obviously, that's important, is to make sure that both leaders are able to get to a strong solution. We know right now, with adding Ambassador John Bolton as our national security advisor, who basically jumped right into the job, has been a real asset in providing guidance. It's why we need Mike Pompeo to be confirmed immediately. Having Congress push that forward next week is going to be critical, and having those players in place and moving forward on the summit to make sure that we again show North Korea that we're with this campaign that we put on you. We expect changes. We are seeing changes, but they got to keep true to their promise. And that's going to be the key. We're going to be holding them accountable.
Mercedes, I mentioned some other news. The president making some news with some tweets just in the last half hour about the Michael Cohen case, among other things. The New York Times and a third-rate reporter named Maggie Haberman, known as a crooked H flunky, he writes, who I don't speak to and have nothing to do with, are going out of their way to destroy Michael Cohen and his relationship with me in the hope that he will flip. They use non-existent sources and a drunk, drugged up loser who hates Michael, a fine person with a wonderful family. Michael is a businessman for his own account, lawyer who I've always liked and respected. Most people will flip if the government lets him out of trouble, even if it means lying or making up stories. Sorry, I don't see Michael doing that despite the horrible witch hunt and the dishonest media. First of all, I have to ask you, we had Alan Dershowitz on just a few moments ago, and the president tends to listen to what he has to say on TV. And Alan Dershowitz said, stop the tweeting about these legal cases. So I ask you, as a White House official, why would the president now engage in an ongoing legal matter where Michael Cohen's office and home have just been raided? Why would he engage?
Well, President Trump is a fighter, and you're going to know his opinion. And when it comes to Michael Cohen, he's known Michael Cohen for a long time. You know, he doesn't like that obviously you're seeing so much of this expansion going on with these raids and these situations. And so I think for the president, you know, he's going to talk about what he thinks and his opinion about that.
But does
I mean,
it make
obviously
legal
he's known
sense
Michael
to get
Cohen.
involved in this case? Does it make legal sense, really?
Look, I'm not a lawyer. You have to ask his personal legal team.
Because you look at Andrew McCabe, James Comey, the investigations now into them and the trouble they might be in. As Alan Dershowitz said, he'd be better off just being silent, letting this all play out. He doesn't have to do anything at all.
Look, I think we all have spent time with the president. He is going to state his opinion on these matters. It would be for you to ask the president's personal team on that. What I can tell you is that for the president, he obviously has a close relationship with Michael Cohen. And I think that, in his mind, he feels that this has been an unfair process, what they've done to him. But at the end of the day, it's for the president's opinion.
All right, Mercedes, speaking of lawsuits, the DNC is suing the Trump campaign, Russia, WikiLeaks, the sun, the moon, Earth, Venus, suing everybody for a bunch of different charges. What does the White House say about this?
Well, I refer you to the Trump campaign on that specifically. But what I can tell you is that the Democrats, they're policy deficient. What I don't understand is I'm trying to still figure out what their agenda is. If their agenda solely has been to obstruct the president, and guess what? Despite what the left media has been pushing, what the Democrats have been pushing against the president, this president has been incredibly successful. We have gone on the road with the president just this week in Florida, and to hear the stories of these men and women who have been able to invest in their businesses, hire more employees, see the benefits that we have seen because of the tax cuts, because of the deregulation agenda that the president has put forth, because of the fact that now we're seeing a healthy, booming economy. That's what we're focused on. We're focused on those American families. And what are the Democrats trying to do? Take away the tax cuts. They're trying to take away the economic benefits. And guess what? President Trump, he trusts the people, not Washington, not the Democrats, in ensuring that the people get the money that they need in order to have the economic success in their lives.
Mercedes, the point that the DNC makes about the lawsuit is it was disrupting democracy. So can the president not turn that back around on them and dig up files from Hillary Clinton's emails?
Look, I think, this is as the Trump campaign had said, it's a total sham. I mean, if that's the way that they're going to go, that's their prerogative. I think at the end of the day, it just shows a bigger problem that the Democrats have in general, which is that of a lack of policy that helps to benefit American families.
All right, Mercedes Sapp, we appreciate it. We've been mentioning, by the way, Barbara Bush's funeral down there in Houston. We're going to have Lee Greenwood coming up. He was a close friend and knew her for 30 years. And so we'll be going to him.
Looking forward to that. Also coming up, the Justice Department watchdog now taking a closer look at James Comey, investigating his memos over classified information. So what could all this mean for the fired FBI director? We'll ask, the man, the myth, the legend.
The world is coming together today to say goodbye to the Bush family matriarch. Former First Lady Barbara Bush will be laid to rest later today.
Someone who has traveled the country and has known Barbara Bush for over 30 years will be at today's funeral. Country music legend Lee Greenwood.
And he joins us live now from Houston. Lee, it's so great to have you. I'm sorry that it's under these circumstances, but let's face it, this is someone who, even though she's passed, we genuinely are celebrating a life well lived today, aren't we?
Yeah, we certainly are, and thank you very much for having me on the show to talk about this wonderful lady. I heard it this morning earlier. Somebody had mentioned she was known as Grace and Grits. I love that because she was solid. I first met her when we had a congressional appearance at the White House for the Reagan administration, and she was so genuinely warm with us. Stern but warm, and the thing you have to recognize that she had such resolve, even though she was so wonderfully warm to people, that if you questioned her resolve, you would realize that she was really meaning what she said.
Some of the things she talked about most, I've been reading her memoirs this week, and I advise everyone out there to read them just to remember her because there's so many fun stories in there and advice about life. She talks about humor being so important in relationships and living a good life, but also that it's not about necessarily how you score on a test and how you do in your job every day. It's how you treat people. It's the impact that you have in people's lives. That's how you'll be remembered. I wonder, all of the time you spent with her, the memories that you have of her and the impact that she had on your life.
Yeah, that's a great point. And all of her sons, they all say exactly the same thing. They repeat what she has said: treat others like you want to be treated yourself. I toured with her for quite some time, right after 2001, across the nation in all the military bases. And every soldier she met, she would shake hands and look them straight in the eye and thank you for your service. She was genuinely concerned about people and how they felt about themselves, not just about us. We recently met again at the hurricane relief down in Texas at Texas A&M. And she was not, she was the same as always. Her and her husband were always giving. As you saw, the former president, last night at the Episcopal Church, actually went and greeted the mourners as they walked by. She was exactly like that.
All right. Lee, we've heard some amazing stories over the course of the last couple of days. Do you have any stories about Barbara Bush you would like to share?
You know, I had a theater in East Tennessee for 5 years, and on the day of the opening, my wife Kim and I invited them to join us, and they did. They flew in from Houston and was sitting in the front row when I did my show. I was nervous as a cat. And they were so good to come up on stage at the end, and I'm standing next to Barbara Bush. She is singing my song, God Bless USA, with me. And I'm like, this is really surreal. It's like, oh my gosh, the First Lady.
That is so powerful.
That's great. Will you have a chance to sing today? Or I know it's a private funeral, so maybe there are eulogies and whatnot, but will you have a chance to sing, or are you participating in any way?
No, I haven't been asked to sing. We are here just to say a final goodbye to a wonderful woman, a beautiful woman who cared so much for her country, a patriot. She had unshakable faith. And she loved her family and her husband bigger than the state of Texas.
Yeah, you know what? If we can all live a life like Barbara Bush, to 92 years old, left such an impact on this world. And as we're talking about, all of us as well. And you, Lee, it's great to have you on this morning to get your personal perspective on Barbara Bush. Thank you so much. And enjoy today.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
All right.
I say it's a celebration because it really is a celebration
of her
of
life.
such
It really
a
is,
wonderful
and her
life.
legacy.
Yeah.
So still ahead. The DNC suing Team Trump, Russia, and more over election interference. Yeah, still talking 2016, but do they have a case? Dan Bongino and former Hillary Clinton advisor Philippe Reines, well, they're here to debate, and that's going to get fiery.
Oh, I can't wait for that. Plus, Geraldo Rivera, Dana Perino, and Neil Cavuto, all coming up live on the show. I hope you're not going anywhere. More to come.
23 minutes after the hour now, and some quick headlines. A Fox News alert: the manhunt for a cold-blooded killer intensifying after he took off right before a jury found him guilty of murder. Verlaine Laguerre walking away during a lunch break at a courthouse in Atlanta. He and another man were convicted for shooting a 19-year-old college football player 50 times. And the driver who packed dozens of illegals into a tractor trailer so hot that 10 of them died will spend the rest of his life behind bars. James Bradley Jr. sentenced in Texas for smuggling 39 undocumented immigrants into the U.S. like cattle. And the FAA ordering emergency inspections for all airlines after a Southwest plane's engine exploded 30,000 feet in the air. The rare move specifically targeting fan blades on Boeing 737s. It all comes just days after a woman was nearly sucked out of the plane. That woman was killed. Ed, over to you.
Thanks, Todd. The Democrats with maybe a new party policy. If you can't beat them, sue them. The DNC filing a lawsuit against the Trump campaign, Russia, WikiLeaks, accusing all three of conspiring to disrupt the 2016 election. Is this really the right message for the Democrats heading into the midterms? Joining us to debate, Dan Bongino, the former Secret Service agent and host of The Dan Bongino Show, and Philippe Reines, former senior advisor to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Gentlemen, normally I would try to bring a debate like this along, but right now I feel like I've got two gladiators in the ring, and I have to simply start this by saying, Dan, what do you think?
Well, yes, you do. Ed, listen, this is a joke. It's a farce. I'm sure Philippe will defend it, and he'll throw out this whole Russian collusion fairy tale again. But the bottom line is our collusion fairy tale has entirely fallen apart. We've been at this for 2 years. There's not a scintilla, not a cent of evidence about actual collusion on the Republican side. But there's a whole lot of evidence that Philippe's former boss colluded with a foreign national from the UK who colluded with foreign nationals from Russia to produce a fake dossier used to spy on fake American, using a fake dossier to spy on real Americans. That should be the lawsuit against Hillary Clinton. The Republicans should file a lawsuit.
Let Philippe react to that. Was there a conspiracy on the Democratic side?
Of course not. If the RNC wants to sue, or if Dan wants to sue, they should go ahead and do so. The reason the Democratic Party is suing is for a pretty simple outcome. What's happening now is the people who should be protecting us going forward are abrogating their responsibility, whether it's the Congressional House Intelligence Committee, whether it's the Senate Committee, whether it's the president. And, you know, we can debate two things. We can debate what happened in 2016. We can debate what we don't want to happen in 2018 or 2020. If you set aside whether Hillary Clinton did or didn't lose or what happened, which I know we could debate all day, There's no question that the Russians tried to meddle and attack our election process. That's not my comment. That's the comment of Mike Pompeo, of Nikki Haley, of DNI Coates.
BuzzFeed that's demanding.
Okay, answer that.
If you're so sure the Russians hacked, why not turn them over?
Well, I want to get something clear here, Dan. Are you saying none of this happened? Because that's not what the President of the United States and the CIA and the NSA believe.
Right, but Philippe, we hear you. But go ahead. Why haven't the DNC servers?
Why hasn't the DNC turned over the server to BuzzFeed? I have no
or
idea.
turned them over to authority, the FBI. Yeah, the FBI.
The FBI that didn't really go and they couldn't tell we're asking? I don't know. Ask Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Excuse me, ask Wendy Wasserman
You know
Schultz.
it.
Okay.
No, I don't. What I know is, Dan, here's what I know. Please let me talk for a minute.
Yeah.
You know nothing.
Let Philippe talk.
The Russians are going to try this again. The Chinese are going to try this again. Others are going to try this again. What exactly is our Congress and our government doing to prevent it? Can you name anything?
Philippe, you still can't answer the question.
Well,
why
I mean, Dan,
vote the DNC if they're so sure the Russians hacked their servers?
Dan, do
why
you
are they
believe
hiding
the Russians
them from the
attacked?
FBI? Why? Don't answer my question. Don't counter it with another. This is Democrat
tell me when Dan stopped
technique.
yelling.
Okay, all right. Well, Philippe, let me ask you a question then, which is a serious one, and I don't know the answer to it. And I know it's not your lawsuit per se, but you're a Democrat. You're closely involved.
I wish it was. I'm happy to affiliate myself
So
with it.
let's say that it's not frivolous and there's merit to this lawsuit. Why the heck wasn't it filed the day after the election? Why is it being filed a year and a half later?
That's an excellent question, and it goes back to what I'm saying. The DNC and the Democratic Party and anyone who cares about the election would probably be more than happy if this never had to be filed. The problem is that you had a year and a half nearly gone by, and everyone has abrogated their responsibility. This is almost a lawsuit of last resort, and I think the DNC was very thoughtful about that. And look, I understand why lawsuits have a sort of obviously negative connotation, but I make 2 points. One, President Trump has been involved in over 4,000 of them, so clearly lawsuits are not it's not that they have no bearing or
Quick second point, and then we'll let Dan
time.
react. What's your second point?
Yeah.
Philippe, you said you had a second
He
point.
still hasn't addressed the question, Ed.
Yeah.
Number one, can he acknowledge that Hillary worked with the Russians through a foreign national
There's
in the
no
UK
one who's
to
ever
produce
been
a fake
tougher on
dossier?
Vladimir Putin than Hillary Clinton.
Okay, but did she work with them on the dossier?
He cannot answer the question.
Did Clinton advisors work on the dossier? That's a fair question.
Dan, I can't hear myself think.
Let Philippe answer. Just clearly, Philippe. So weren't there Clinton advisors working with Christopher Steele on the dossier? Yes or no?
No.
They were not.
She
At the State
already
Department?
admitted it.
No.
Oh,
I don't
my
know
gosh,
what was
this
going
guy's
on at
a
the State
liar.
Department. Absolutely not.
You were a senior
That has
advisor at
been-
the State Department.
Ed, I don't much. When we were at the State Department, absolutely not.
Okay. All right, we're going to leave it right
well,
there.
hold on a second. Dan,
Yeah.
did you just say that's a lie?
Yeah, it is. Sidney Blumenthal.
Why is that a lie? If you want to run around, look, if you want to stick around and stick with the facts that you're upset the DNC paid for it, say it.
So let him answer. So Sidney Blumenthal was involved with pushing the dossier.
has already written an op-ed in the Washington Post. You may have missed it, where they already admitted to being
Give Philippe
part of
10
it.
seconds.
I don't
and then,
know if you
all right,
missed
Dan,
it.
hang
You may
on.
want to read it.
Let Philippe final word.
I can't hear what he's saying, yelling over himself. But no one in the Clinton campaign had anything to do with Christopher Steele. That is a brand new, out of nowhere.
This conversation
theory.
will
But I
continue.
understand why
Yeah.
everyone is so afraid of this lawsuit.
All right,
Look, the
guys.
lawsuit played a big part in Watergate.
All right, gentlemen, Dan, Philippe, appreciate you coming in. Still to come, Geraldo Rivera here with us live, plus the PC police now patrolling preschool. Yes, why some kids can't have a, quote, best friend anymore. I mean, I know Dan and Philippe are not best friends, but why can't I have a best friend?
A final goodbye to Barbara Bush. The beloved former First Lady will be laid to rest today during a private service.
Mike Emanuel is live in Houston with the celebration of the Bush matriarch's incredible life. Mike, good to see you.
Abby, Ed, Todd, good morning to you. Yeah, today the nation will say goodbye to an extraordinary figure in history, the wife of the 41st president and the mother of the 43rd. There was a really touching moment during yesterday's public visitation when former President George Herbert Walker Bush and his daughter Dorothy decided to surprise basically the well-wishers who were paying their respects to Mrs. Bush. It also gave them a private opportunity to spend some time inside St. Martin's Church with Mrs. Bush lying in repose. There was a steady stream of people visiting St. Martin's Church for the public portion of this farewell to the First Lady. People told us Mrs. Bush had class and grace. As a tribute, many folks wore Mrs. Bush's favorite color, blue, and some wore her trademark pearls. A number of mourners spoke to us about Mrs. Bush's passionate work over the years on literacy. They also say they respected the way and admired the way she carried herself as the matriarch of the Bush family.
But when we found out about the First Lady's viewing today, we had to take the day off and come down and show our respects.
And she was so gracious, loving, kind for her family, her friends, and most of all for her husband, George.
And she was just a strong woman, and we will miss her here in Texas.
We expect about a 90-minute funeral service with 3 eulogies to be delivered, including one by her son, former Florida Governor Jeb Bush. 4 former presidents will be in attendance, along with First Lady Melania Trump. Back to you guys in New York.
Mike Emanuel's been covering the Bush family for a long time and doing it well, and we appreciate your reporting today. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. All right, we now want to bring in Geraldo Rivera, Fox News correspondent at large. Geraldo, first, just about Barbara Bush, because today is really about celebrating her life. We also saw the moment yesterday of George H.W. Bush sitting next to that coffin. What a powerful moment. But I've been reading Barbara Bush's memoirs this week, and there is this great story that she tells about the first date she had with George H.W., who the nickname he had was Poppy. And apparently he asked his parents to use the Oldsmobile, the car, because it was the only car they had with a working radio, Geraldo. He was so worried that they would have nothing to talk about on that first date that Barbara Bush wouldn't speak. And he then said that was the last time I ever worried about that she basically talked forever after that moment. But just a reminder, Geraldo, of this woman. She had such a good sense of humor, but balanced her toughness out with being so loving and being so warm and gracious.
I absolutely agree, Abby. Good morning to you, Todd and Ed. She was, it's so touching, so poignant in this moment of great division in our country where there are 2 sides. It's almost like a civil war is being fought in a philosophical, political battlefield. And yet Barbara Bush is a universal figure of great acclaim and endearment to both sides of the American clan right now. She was the glue that held her family together. She was in many ways, I think, the spunk of the family, the spine of the family.
The enforcer.
When she and Governor Jeb Bush were campaigning, when Governor Bush was campaigning against Donald Trump and the 15 other candidates, I remember so clearly the former First Lady and the mother of the candidate saying to Jeb that he had to toughen up, that he had to interrupt the way the others did. He had to fight back. And I just loved her. She was like a combination head football coach, matriarch, as you suggest. She was a kind of a mother superior in many ways. I loved the fact that she refused to dye her hair as it turned white prematurely. She was in every way a charismatic and loving and magnetic figure.
From a shining example to James Comey, Justice Department Inspector General, who has been working harder than anybody, it seems, in the city of Washington, D.C., probing James Comey and his memos over potential classified material. What do you make of all this?
Well, first of all, from his own book, Comey describes himself as stubborn, prideful, overconfident, and driven by ego. So I agree with his own self-assessment. I believe that those memos, I once had a surgery that went bad, and then they examined the medical records, and the medical records had all been meticulously written in favor of every decision the doctor made, ex post facto. It's the same thing with the James Comey memo. Everything in the memo is written, it seems to me, to corroborate his own version of what happened between he and the president in the private setting. They were so totally self-serving. They were, as I said, ex post facto. I don't think they're very meaningful. Now, is James Comey at legal jeopardy for admittedly leaking that material, which may not have been classified at the time? Subsequently, some of it became classified in retrospect. I don't know if Comey will be indicted for violating the secrecy acts of the various secrecy acts. But I do think what will be the bitter irony from the anti-Trump point of view, from the people who support the president and a potential impeachment or obstruction charges and so forth. What will be the fascinating scenario will be when James Comey testifies against Andrew McCabe.
Right.
Andrew McCabe now facing these very serious charges of lying under
somebody's
oath.
lying between
Comey
the
will
two.
be the biggest witness against him.
Yeah.
What's that, Abby?
I said
Sorry.
someone's lying between the two of them.
Oh, somebody is. But I mean, how unseemly will it be? And in many ways, corroborating President Trump's account of what happened when these two G-men are pointing figures. No, he lied. No, he lied.
Yeah.
No, he gave me permission. No, he didn't give me permission. And in the meantime, to the point that I saw Dan Bongino making earlier on the program. Remember Russiagate? It's almost like Russiagate is irrelevant. Where's Russiagate? There's no Russiagate. Where's the collusion? Where's the conspiracy between the dark forces of Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin to sabotage the American election? Wasn't that what this was all supposed to be about?
Right, and they haven't found evidence of collusion. So now another person in legal jeopardy on a whole nother matter is Michael Cohen, the president's longtime personal attorney. And earlier on the program, we had Alan Dershowitz on, who you know has been somewhat favorable in his commentary about the president. And he said, look, I think the president should simply stop tweeting, stop talking specifically about the Cohen case, about Robert Mueller's case and the special counsel. And then literally about a half hour later, the president started this tweet storm about Michael Cohen and whether he's going to flip. What say you about what the president should be doing right now with Michael Cohen?
Well, let me take it first from Professor Dershowitz's advice. I have always said if I had my dream job right now, it would be as President Trump's Twitter editor, that if only he would show them to me before he unleashed them on the universe. I think that he would have, he's so tempestuous at times that he makes his own life more complicated. I totally get his frustration about Michael Cohen and everyone talking, Sam Nunberg and all these other people. Michael Cohen's going to flip on the president. That this Russiagate is nothing. This will all be about tax fraud or bank fraud or some private dealing dark dealing between Michael Cohen and the president of the United States. So I understand the president's frustration. Hey, wait a second. First of all, Michael Cohen is not going to flip. Second of all, the New York Times story is off base. They're relying on Nunberg, this druggie, as the only evidence that Cohen will do this and that. I understand the president's frustration, but I do think, and this is why I think the appointment of Rudy Giuliani to the defense team in the last couple of days is significant. As Russiagate fades into obscurity, as it becomes clear to everybody that there is no collusion with Russia, that whatever the Russians did, they were state actors trying to sabotage another state's election. Shame on them. Sanctions. Let's hit them. Let's make sure they never do it again. Let's be vigilant against it. But there was no conspiracy or collusion with Trump to do it. But I do think
but we want to be careful
Michael Cohen
about
situation.
We want to be careful about tweets and everything else accusing somebody of being a drunk or a druggie or something like that, because we don't have evidence of that either.
Well, I think in Nunberg's case, there was some evidence. There was an admission, or at least they were reported that there was alcohol. I just want to quickly say that the Michael Cohen situation is more of a vulnerability, legally speaking, to the president than Mueller. Mueller will fade. That will go. He'll write a scolding letter. But it will all be about the Southern District of New York. Michael Cohen, Rudy Giuliani will defend him
Rivera, President Trump's tweet editor.
Tweet editor. All right, we got Neil Cavuto coming up.
Thanks,
Dana
Geraldo.
Perino. A lot more. Dana Perino.
Time now for a Fox News alert. North Korea suspending its nuclear testing.
So how is Wall Street reacting to all of this, and how will the news affect the markets this week?
Well, here with his insight, Neil Cavuto, the host of Cavuto Live, going to be airing at 10 a.m. Eastern right after us. And Neil, it was only a few months ago, you had all these critics of the president saying we're on the brink of nuclear war. I wonder, the markets probably will like the idea that we might be on the brink of peace.
Yeah, I think that a lot of this broke after the markets were closed. In other words, the concessions that the North Korean leader was looking at here, but they are, as you guys have been reported, fairly sweeping. I might say as well that the markets were kind of fixated on these political developments regarding the president. And it's uncanny, guys, that the better things look for him, the better things look for the markets. The worse things look for him in this investigation, or that perception, the worse for the markets. I remember this almost the exact same relationship relationship with Bill Clinton. Although a Democrat in this largely Republican crowd, they liked what he was doing for the economy and the markets, and they didn't want him to go. I think it's fair to say here that these markets feel the same way.
When when Robert Mueller told the president recently that he is not the target of either investigation of the Russia probe or Rosenstein told the president. How did the markets react to that? I'm curious.
Well, that was an odd one, Abby, because it occurred late in the day that we got that. First, it was a Bloomberg report that Rosenstein had told the president, look, you are not a target of this probe. Now, we don't know how reliable that is or whether he, in fact, has said that he certainly hasn't commented on that. But the markets, which were already down about 200 points at the time, and this story broke about 15 minutes before the markets closed. Well, they rebounded 100 points from that level. So again, it's just the latest reminder that these markets do follow this development, especially when it can tick in their favor or against their favor.
Neil, who do you have coming up on the show?
Well, we're looking at all of this right now and this back and forth and who's going to vote against what and who's suing whom and all of that. A lot of money involved when you're talking lawsuits, guys. Senator Ben Cardin, he's on the Foreign Relations Committee, going to get his view of all of that. The Democrat, of course, has gone out on a record to say he does not really flip over Michael Pompeo to be the next Secretary of State. He respects his background and pedigree and all of that. We'll get back and forth on this idea that maybe given these tense negotiations with North Korea and what seems to be remarkable progress early on, whether that could change. We'll see.
Neil, are you suing anyone that we should know about?
Not that I know of. Although, you find out in the darndest ways.
It's true.
So, I don't know. I think I'm free and clear.
Well, we look forward to your show, Neil. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks, guys, very much.
All right, coming up on our show, here is a live look inside St. Martin's Episcopal Church in Houston, where hundreds will soon be celebrating the beautiful life of late First Lady Barbara Bush. Dana Perino is a close friend, of course, of the Bush family, who served as press secretary under President George W. Bush. And she is joining us next to reflect on Barbara Bush's enduring impact. We look so forward to hearing from her. Stick around.
There's Dana.
Preparations underway in Houston right now for the funeral of Barbara Bush.
And the event will be, of course, especially touching for one of our next guests.
Dana Perino was President George W. Bush's press secretary and, of course, a close friend of the Bush family. Dana, I know this is a day for you that is so important. You knew her well. Thank you for getting up early for us this morning. Just give us a sense of the woman that you knew.
Well, I think that so many words have been spoken, and there's the same theme runs through, that she was beloved, she was hilarious, she was a woman of great character, she had high expectations of others, she loved being a wife, a mother, and a grandmother, and then she understood also how to help her family be public servants. As Abby, I know your family teaches the same thing for all of your whole clan. And so today actually feels a little more somber because the initial outpouring of, I've got to tell you my great story about Barbara Bush, that has been going on for several days. Today the weather's a little bit darker. People are starting to arrive for the funeral. And I just found out, Abby, that George H.W. Bush is going to wear some book socks in order to pay tribute to his beloved's literacy efforts. Yes, I thought that was very sweet.
I just love that. Well, Dana, we all saw that moment yesterday, as I know you did. You can see here George H.W. Bush next to the coffin of the woman that he loved, was married to for 73 years. Talk to us about what we're seeing right here and what you think might be going through his mind.
Well, he wanted to put out a statement last week thanking everybody for their thoughts and prayers. He says that he can feel them. He's in pretty good spirits, of course, heartbroken, but surrounded by family and friends. And then he wanted to personally be there and shake the hands of people that were coming through the line. That was at around 1 o'clock yesterday. She laid in repose for 12 hours yesterday. Over 6,000 people came from their places of work, after work, in order to pay their respects to her. And I think today what you'll see at the funeral, which Fox News will take live, is a celebration of her life and a chance to just pause and be quiet for a moment before we move on, as Barbara Bush would have wanted us to do.
Yeah, Dana, I've probably known your husband Peter now for over a decade, and he's a great guy, and he had a fun interaction, as I recall you mentioning a couple of days ago, with Barbara Bush.
Well, he has had a couple. One of them that I love is we were talking about the importance of thank you notes, and I'm a big proponent of it.
And we returned home from the trip. He wrote a thank you note. I had immediately gone on to another trip. Well, he didn't have the address. By the time the note got there, it was 2 weeks late. We saw them about a month later, and the first thing she said to Peter was, well, that was the latest thank you note I ever received. But then she winked at him. And something I think that's really important to know is that she did have high expectations of people. She was a traditional